Are you in New Delhi or in Los Angeles right now?
I'm in Los Angeles. I primarily live between Los Angeles and New York. I shuttle back and forth. But I do go often to Delhi for maybe once or twice a year because our manufacturing is there. So I have to travel back and forth.
One of the first things that I was reading about your story that kind of gravitates to, I thought was super interesting, was how you started as a 14-year-old traveling with your dad. And that was almost your first experience in that world. Do you have any great memories or stories to tell us about those days?
So I know it sounds really poetic right now, but at the time it wasn't fun. I mean, my father was a block exporter and we were not allowed any holidays at home. So I had to travel with him to quarries and these factories. He traveled a lot across Southeast Asia. And quarries are not the easiest locations to be at. You know, you land somewhere in the middle of nowhere, then you have to drive some 2 or 3 hours out, and the quarries have no real conveniences, no food, no comfortable spaces. So at the time, it was not fun, but it did give me years of insight into the material, into identifying the correct blocks and understanding the different blocks, the materiality of it, understanding just how much material from quarries is not used, the different quarry formations. So I traveled across India, a lot in Europe as well, just marking blocks for him. Yeah, it was fun now that I look back.
I can imagine, right? As a teenager, the last thing you want is to be out and about doing that sort of thing. But I'm curious, while like if you're gonna look back and you there, like as you mentioned, those very excluded places, not like perhaps not even safe for kids to be around. Did you understand the purpose of it? Did you understand what you were doing or your dad was working on?
Of course. So I was marking blocks for him. So we'd have buyers who would come in to the quarries and they would be selecting largely blocks for projects, architectural projects and design projects. So we were looking for material consistencies, variations, uh, and sometimes we had to identify 100 blocks, sometimes we had to identify 1 or 2 blocks. And I would take a spray paint and I would just spray that this is sold on the blocks. Now I definitely look at blocks in a similar way, but also differently because I look for one-off pieces sometimes where I'm looking for sculptures, um, or some particular installation where I need a particular veining or formation in the stone in the material. Uh, and the different quarries also, there are step quarries and there are individual quarries. So at that time, I don't think I understood. Now I appreciate that I had that access. Uh, but at that time, I didn't understand that I would even be involved in it. In fact, I would question, why am I here? What am I doing?
Was your father like restricted? Was he tough on you?
Oh, yes. So I was raised in a business family. Always wanted to be an artist. I was very good at sketching and painting, but he was very disciplined. He encouraged being disciplined, and I'm grateful for that now. Um, but at the time, he did not encourage me to be an artist. He said, "How are you going to make money?" So no, that was not allowed. But it was a good thing. In hindsight, it was great because it gave me a really good insight into building a business. What I do right now is fairly investment heavy, infrastructure heavy. We need a lot of people to do what we do, and I'm lucky that I've been able to build a practice where I have built a business, and at the same time, I'm able to create things and create things on the intersection of art, architecture, design, and build something which requires both my left and my right brain. And that would not have happened if I'd become an artist right in the beginning, because I wouldn't have known anything else then.
Tell
So
me a little bit about this process, about wanting to be an artist and understanding the meaning of how to run a business. At what point did you realize there's no way back for you, that this is what you really want to do?
So this started as a business, and it started as a business as me doing things which were creative, which were completely different, which was not really available in the market. So I was raised in India, and we have a strong heritage of stone architecture and design, and I grew up traveling to all these monuments. And I knew that this existed because I had that understanding of materiality. When I came back from my post graduation, I knew that I'm going to start a business, and I decided there was nothing to really prove at the time, and the intention was just to create something which uh, kept my interest, but at the same time made money. And the business grew very quickly. Uh, it grew very quickly. We were able to. I realized that there's a market where architects and designers want to do things which are creative with natural stone. And I think it was 3 or 4 years into the business where I was taking on projects from whether it's facade architecture, whether it's interior architecture, whether it's doing sculptures for clients. I was taking on projects because they were different. I realized that people are beginning to recognize me as a material expert, as somebody who really knows what can be done. And what happens is that designers, architects, they are not trained in stone as a material. They're trained in wood, they're trained in metal, they're trained in glass. Stone is a difficult material to deal with, and they were not very comfortable with it. So I would come in as a subject matter expert. And I think then a decade down the line, I realized that I am actually in a position now to be able to pursue my interest as an artist, and that could be creating anything. And because I had the infrastructure, we are now almost 300 people. So because we had the infrastructure, I could think scale, I could think larger installations, I could think complete facades of buildings as skins. I could do all of that. So it was a gradual process, which made me realize that I want to work with this. Didn't happen initially, for sure.
You walk me through the process of those early days and the conversation with an architect about using stones as the main material. As you mentioned, you were the expert on the subject. You always became a resource for a lot of those firms. What was the back and forth? What are the kind of information you needed from them to make sure you were equipped to provide the services that they required?
Sure. So let's take the example of, say, I'm doing something for the facade architecture. They want to create a sculptural facade. Um, I would pick up their bases as a canvas, their current elevation as a canvas, and I would sketch on it. And once I would sketch on it and I would show them my idea, then and they have approved it, I would also require some sort of input about the budget, what uh, what they have in mind for that, the time frame. And then I would go back and I would work on the 3D modeling of it. And I have a design team which does that. We would work on the 3D modeling. I play a lot with textures and dimensionality. And when you're on the outside, the sun moves around and the light and shadow plays a very important part of it. And that's what makes it a truly unique sculpture. So then we would play around with the 3D model. We would do light simulations. We would see how the structure or the form comes around. And we would then show the rendering during the day or at night. We would show it in maybe some different colors, some different textures. And then once that is approved, then we would go back and create a shop drawing which would show the seams, because block sizes, they are limited. Depending on what color you decide, you have to then identify where the seams come in. What I like to typically do is I like to have seamless installations. So whatever the pattern is, I like to have the seams along the pattern. So it's a massive jigsaw puzzle which is interlocking, and that makes it look like this one large piece. I also like to really show that this is natural stone and not something which is not natural. So I really tend to accentuate the materiality, the natural formations, the veins, any sort of cracks which are there in the material, any sort of natural fossils which are there. I tend to accentuate that, and make it unique like that. So that's the whole process.
Did you feel sometimes you had to really convince architects to go for the natural material? Because if you know enough architect and designers, they like to have fully control of the project and the material involved with the project. But when we're talking about a stone, as you mentioned, that's something that is imperfections, there's coloring, there's so much
Hmm.
to play with.
Hmm.
It was that conversations happen back and forth that you had to come very much to explain why the natural stone would be better than something perhaps artificial and manufactured?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's not just architects and designers. Sometimes it's even clients who you have to really educate. So when you're saying, say, it's going to be in white marble tends to have some veining and characteristics. Sometimes if the client is not educated enough and the architect hasn't communicated to the client, the client has expectations of, say, pristine, pure white marble. And it's just not possible, particularly when you're carving from solid blocks and you're making a sculpture. And if there's a speck or a blemish, to completely reject that means you're wasting the entire block and you're not accepting the beauty of it. So, yes, architects and clients both tend to, there is a learning curve. You really
Mhm.
have to explain to them what is better. There are budget constraints, and sometimes when I realize that the client does not understand the material and is not open to something which is natural, then we simply walk away from that project. We recommend that they use something which is artificial, because there is an expectation for perfect tiles or perfect symmetrical things, and that's not our ethos, and also that's not possible. I mean, the amount of waste which is in which happens when you start rejecting pieces which are not perfect, it's crazy. It's crazy, and it just makes the entire business completely. It doesn't make sense if you start doing that. So yes, there's definitely resistance. But now I'm lucky. I'm finally at a place where architects and designers who want to work with me, they know that I work with, they know that I accentuate the natural beauty of it. And we are actually making an intense effort to even communicate the perfect imperfection and the beauty of it. Yes, there is an effort there.
What role do you see like natural stones playing in the future of architecture and in interior design, particularly in the context of evolving technologies?
So I don't know if you know about Hampi and these beautiful step wells which are in India, where stone was used not just as a design element, but an architectural and a structural element. So entire buildings and entire structures are made with stone. In fact, in Hampi, which is built during the Vijayanagar dynasty, it is built between the 4th and the 8th century. You have entire granite structures, you have entire uh, carved mountains, and these structures are carved intricately first, but also keeping in mind the rain and how the rain will collect on the structure, and then how the rain will fall, and then how this rain will make the sound when it falls on another stone surface. In fact, some of these columns can be played with your hand. So there's a lot of sound there. There's one concert hall which is made entirely with stone. And when you go there with a guide, he will actually play the column and show you how the resonance and the sound of it is there. So there was a lot of thought and mindfulness earlier to buildings. And I think there is a lot of possibility when it comes to using stone as an architectural and a design and a structural element now. And it's so versatile as a material that it could be an Art Deco building, it could be a classical building, it could be a Gothic building, it could be an Indian classical building, it could be a parametric modern building using technology. So, using softwares like Rhino and Grasshopper and 3D Max, we can make these models which are very elaborate. We also have some softwares where we practically sculpt the stone. So it's literally sculpting the model and adding textures, a lot of textures, which allow us to create these monumental pieces in, I mean, we don't have the time of centuries and decades anymore. Everybody's in a rush. Everybody wants things tomorrow. They want to take a year to finalize the drawing, but when it comes to delivery, they want it tomorrow, and we need to carve stones. So that's why technology not just helps us in making the process a lot quicker, but
Mhm.
also to a large extent, not standardizing it, but having some sort of consistency, which uh, when it comes to skilled labor, that it's not possible. Say I'm supposed to create 20,000 square feet of carved facade for a client. Uh, I don't have 5 years to do it, and they need some sort of consistency to be able to look that way. So technology really helps us in making the process quicker, having some sort of standardization. Yeah, and also creating these textures which we couldn't before. Some of our textures are just, yeah. We couldn't have done it by hand.
How so? Tell me more about the technology that it been enabling you to create different textures that couldn't be done by hand, perhaps something that wasn't wouldn't be able to do it before.
Yes, so we finish everything with hand. That's important for us to finish everything with hand because I do not like the striations and the machine tooling marks which remain. So we finish everything with hand. And when I say finish everything with hand, it could be using sanding papers and removing that. It could be uh, using a chisel and finishing and breaking pieces like that. But still, technology allows us to say I've carved a very intricate lattice work, a breathing surface for a client, and I want to texturize it without breaking it. And chisel can sometimes break it. So I can
Mm.
actually take an image, and any image of a texture, a photograph of a texture, and I can embed that image on that jali, and that gets then carved into the model. So I'm adding that texture without subjecting that piece to the possibility of breaking.
Mhm.
And that's something which is incredible. I can do carvings which are with a 1 tool with technology, which I could not do earlier. So technology is great. I love technology. It's opened up a whole new world of carving, which was maybe possible, but using the given the time constraint was not really practical.
Any other specific reason, perhaps natural stones would be better than any other material currently used during the construction aspect, not only for the interior design, the visual aspect, but also for the structure of the building itself?
Absolutely. We recently also introduced bricks with stone bricks. So that's really exciting because firstly, we are using remnants, leftover pieces which would have been discarded for creating these bricks. Also, stone is a structural element. I mean, there are different types of stone. So sandstone, limestone, granite, they all have different structural strength, and we can do tests to figure that out. But even when it comes to sustainability, bricks are so good. Stone bricks are such a great alternative to regular bricks, which require a furnace. You have to bake the bricks to make them, and that's a significant amount of carbon emissions. Here, you're using something which is completely natural, which would have not been used earlier. It's a discarded remnant which we've used to create a build. It has the structural integrity to be able to support a structure or to support a building. It also has the potential to for you to carve things. We have now had inquiries where clients want bricks which have one face of them maybe textured, which have one face of them with a slight curvature. So they can then play around with those modules and they can really use that. So yes, I think there is a lot of possibilities when it comes to that. Yeah.
But in what way do you see your work contributing to the broader conversation about sustainability, but also craftsmanship and the preservation of natural resources?
So we've made in the last few years we've made substantial investment and effort towards becoming more sustainable. Uh, it has not been easy. So we've done the basic things which we could immediately do was our plants are 80% solar powered. All our water is recycled and recirculated. We have also been so there is a lot of stone dust which is produced when we are carving. And we have been in conversation with a couple of companies to prepare to make a sort of a 3D printer, um, which uses the stone dust to create sculptures, to create products. So the process becomes manufacturing by addition as opposed to manufacturing by removal, which is what we are doing right now. We have made some headway, but not very significant headway in that. But that's something which we are working towards. We've launched these bricks, and another attempt has been to. I mean, that's something which we will launch by the end of the year. We are launching objects, collectible design objects, which are made completely from remnants. So you're literally standing on top of each block, seeing the beauty of that because there's soul in natural stone. There's no comparable material. There's nothing which is as beautiful and it has that connection to humanity as stone does. So we literally stand on top of each block and identify what can be done. Another thing which I have been also really trying to figure out, and I am we are going through a few projects with architects and designers who understand stone as a material. That say you're building this, whether it's a hospitality building or a residential building, we identify two or three materials, and these two or three materials are then used. We identify a couple of blocks of each of these materials, but we use every inch of that block. Now, what that means is, I don't think many people understand how technically difficult that is. But say I have to use every inch of that block, I'm carving a tub from it. I'm taking out textured sculptural walls from it. I'm taking out the floor of it. Whatever leftover pieces are, maybe I carve a wash basin for you. Maybe I carve some objects, some side tables for you. Maybe I carve some serveware and platters for you. Maybe I carve some lights out of that for you. But using every inch of that block, to be able to claim that and do that, before I even start promoting this, I'm actually doing three projects where I'm doing this so that I can be true to myself that yes, we are doing this. But it is important. It's interesting. Some architects have come around and told me, "Oh, you mean I have to identify just two materials to use in the entire project?" People will think I'm cheap. And that's weird for me because I think the everybody wants to show that, oh, I've used this material here, this material here, this material here, this material here, instead of thinking of the project holistically, that I can actually use the entire material in a sustainable way. So it's a learning curve, not just for us, but even for the architects and the designers who are obviously learning about the material. And now we have to be sustainable. There is no question about that. So now, because we have to be sustainable, and we have to be mindful of how we are using our materials, and that kind of reflects in the name of one of my companies also, Borrowed Earth. I like to remind people that all this material is borrowed. So all our marketing collateral or all our social media is trying to make people understand the natural beauty of the material, the fact that we cannot just reject material, the perfect
Mhm.
imperfect angle of it. um, and so the homes, the objects, the bricks are some of our efforts to do something where we are using all the wastage, where we are trying to be sustainable. It's difficult though in some aspects, but we are making the best effort which we can.
And that's all we can do. I think sustainability is a topic that's been around for better part of over a decade, if not longer than that. But the industry has really been talking about for a few years now. But I think there's this image for companies that to become sustainable, there's a big investment they require of them to change their way they do things. It can be very expensive. Now, for you, for a company like yourself, you mentioned that going towards that way to become fully sustainable. Can you look back now, perhaps, in some of the investment and say how that became a profitable for your business going, you know, taking that approach, how you can see the benefit on the bottom line? Not only, of course, all the great things that comes with sustainability and being environmental cautious, but as a business person now, you can look at the numbers and say, those investments now are paying off, and here they are.
They haven't paid off yet, but I am hopeful that they will pay off in the future. I'm hoping that us talking more about the research angle of it, us talking more about using stone in a very mindful way, us talking more about trying to use the remnants, us educating people about aspect of it will eventually be great for our bottom line. I'm hopeful that that will be the case. Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is all a journey, and I'm lucky. I'm blessed to have a team, and my father and I, we work together to have a team which is extremely passionate about what we do. Starting from the quarry, like identifying the right block and bringing it to the factory, and then standing on top of the block and being like, "This is not gonna work, and this is gonna fall apart," and then making sure that it does, and making sure then it gets transported halfway across the world to the United States or to the Middle East, wherever the project is, and then making sure it's installed correctly, and then yeah, it's a process, and it really takes a village to make what we do happens. It's a lot of work.
See, I'm talking to you. I'm getting the sense that you're someone who values mindfulness, and you have a confidence with the product that you were, your own brand and your creative endeavor. And you're talking about you have a big team, and it's a family business as well that you guys collaborate on this. But how do you cultivate these qualities within yourself and your team?
Because cultivating the culture around art, design, cultivating the culture around sustainability has been a really uh, tough road. Honestly, it's particularly because I travel a lot, and for me, every time I visit, I have to, besides communicating through our website and through the work which we do, I think the hardest is communicating it to the laborer who's hand finishing each product, to the person who does not think sustainability, to who's not even, who doesn't care. He's just, the only thing he cares about is that he has to work for these 8 to 9 hours. He has to hand finish this product. It's not something which is it's not the easiest thing to do. It's tiring. And if the piece doesn't come out right, he's going to pick it up and throw it. He doesn't care about sustainability. He has to follow that design. So, firstly, my attempt was to put in a culture of art and design into the company and to help them develop an eye where they see that this is beautiful, imperfection is beautiful, this is nice. So, that, but then now also having the whole sustainability angle is a steep curve. In fact, we have this course on sustainability, which I'm making the entire company do at the moment. It's a 11-hour module course, and sustainability in stone. I don't think any of them is very happy with me about it, but it's something which we have to do, and it's we have to evolve. We, we have to be mindful, and we have to be true to ourselves more than anything else.
And that's so important because you made a great comment that an observation that I think I want to highlight. A lot of the times, those workers, everybody cares about sustainability in the environment, but at the end of the day, they just want to do their job, get paid, feed their family, and that's it. That's a survival right there for a lot of people. Most of the world live on that mindset. We just want to go
Mhm,
through the day so I can provide to my family, and
mhm,
have them going through a re-education process is an interesting thing because that hopefully will pass down on their own household as well. They're going to be having this conversation with their kids and their family members. And that's how I believe it does take time. As you mentioned before, it's been a tough road, but it takes someone to do it. Someone has to do it. So I want to applaud you for taking the lead on this and doing all of that. That conversation, it was a tough conversation with your father as well, because someone who's been doing certain things in a way for many years, and then you come in and say, hey, great, good job, you did great, but now this is how we're going to do things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I don't think my father, I think even for my father, it's been, and I really commend him for that. It's been a really, like, he's a businessman, like I said, and he never wanted to have, he joined the business 5 years after I started it when it was growing. He was never into doing a art and design business. And his attitude was like, initially when my intention was to not be an artist, and now I can put my foot down and say that this is an art and design centric business, but at the time he would keep telling me that what you're doing is not business. If you're creating something new for every client, that is not business. Business is when you create something and you sell it 10,000 times. That is business. So him and I constantly, I've had to remind him several times that, you and I are in the same business, we are doing the same thing, but it is important for us to be this way. Otherwise we will be just any other company which is doing standard rollout product, mass produced, which is not mindful of anything, and then we'll be just anybody. So yes, conversations with my father have been difficult as well, because he's a different generation and a different mindset. I, because wanted to be an artist, and I have traveled enough. I have been exposed to enough cities across the world to understand architecture, design, and I really immerse myself into it. That I have, without questioning any constraints, I've been able to build this diverse portfolio of art and architecture. And I think this has been definitely a struggle for him. And that's the first hurdle. And then him and I come on the same page, and then we have to communicate that to the rest of the team that this is what has to happen. And then we have to communicate that to the installers that great, we've made this beautiful mural, we made this beautiful sculpture, and now this project is getting installed in Qatar. We don't know who the installation team is in Qatar. Are they going to ruin it there? Are they going to not understand what has to be done? Are they going to grout it incorrectly and ruin it? We don't know. So it's teaching at every step. It's teaching at every step. And sometimes I really question that why do I do something which is so difficult, where so many people are involved, and every project is literally like a startup. Every project is a startup because you have to rethink everything. But then when the final product comes across, and when you see it and when you touch it, and you just, then that makes eventually that makes it worth it.
uh, all the tears, sweat, and blood is there, and you can fully embrace it and have that moment of enjoy it. Okay, we did it. Now we start over.
We start all over. Yeah, that's just how it.
Now, I mean, you've been doing this for a few years now, and you have achieved a certain level of success, and the business is not only growing but also is flourishing. The different opportunities and excitements around what are you doing. Do you have like an ultimate goal, like something that you aiming to achieve? In terms of okay, I'm happy and grateful where I am right now, but I'm not even near to where I want to be.
So I allow things to surprise. I started this business in India, and it was a learning curve, uh, but it was a slightly less steep learning curve because the architects and designers are well versed with natural stone over there. And 6 years back, I moved to America where I had to unlearn everything and start all over again. It was great because I was obviously, even though I was starting afresh, I was starting with a huge portfolio. I could unlearn things and I could decide what would work here. And I have definitely evolved as an artist. Like I sometimes can't stand some of the things I did previously. But when I started Borrowed Earth a couple of years back as a practice, and this year we already have these objects and these other things which are coming up. The other day, when somebody asked me the same question, my immediate thought was have a mountain, like get an abandoned quarry where I'm able to create a sort of a gallery. Have you seen the Ellora caves in India? I'm
Yeah,
not sure if you've seen them.
yeah, I'm familiar
Uh,
with them.
they so they were built top down, and they were built by say 6 or 7 generations of the family. So what I would love to do is to have a mountain or a mountain range where I'm able to really create an inspiring space, a gallery for all sorts of arts, for experimentation, for working with not just stone, but also all the elements, water, light, and incorporating that and creating immersive spaces. Uh, for people to which are tactile, which show the scale, which show the possibilities, which show the technology, and allow people to be inspired, to be just inspired by the space and what can be done. Something which I always notice when I have exhibitions is the first response people have is to go and touch things. And that's our connection to natural stone. That's because there's soul in there. That's natural. So the first thing they do is they go and touch it. So I would like these spaces to be these spaces or these exhibitions, whatever you want to call it. I want to create which are immersive and possibly have a borrowed earth, Ruchika Grover. I don't know. I don't care so much about my name in there, but having spaces which are inspiring, having a mountain. Yeah.
I want a mountain. I want to ask something that perhaps you share the same sentiments that I do, because I also get to travel a lot and come from someone for a part of the world that is so rich in culture. But when you start traveling in our community, in the design and architecture community, they very much value the European American style of things, the Western version of architecture looks like or design is supposed to look like. What are some of the few things you think those architects and designers in the Western world could learn from architects and the creative community in India?
Oh, so much. Oh, absolutely so much. I mean, there are so many architectural and design practices, traditional Indian architectural design and practices, which can be beautifully incorporated. I mean, even the whole process of hand carving. That's something which is not traditionally a part of regular Western architect. That's something which is not a part of their vernacular. So, I mean, there are buildings in India which have these breathing surfaces or jalis, which was used to ventilate uh, spaces, which was used to cool down spaces. There would be stone slabs and panels at the base of the building, which had spaces for water to go through, so that would cool down the building. That's Those are traditional Indian practices which can be used. These are just some things which come right at the top of my head. And besides that, Indian pattern making, so much inspiration from the textiles and the different uh, all the different states in India have a completely different art and aesthetic. And in fact, this is a project which I had gone down to, where I'd taken one form of Indian painting called Pichwai paintings. And these are paintings which are overwhelming in just the sheer amount of things which are there in them, and the color, and just the color and the intricacy of it. They are a lot for anybody to process. So what I did was, and that was my own journey. My intention was not to sell it to anybody, but I disintegrated a Pichwai painting. So I uh, took out each element of the Pichwai painting and tried to go deep into what each element meant. And I tried to really accentuate it. And that was a great process. And it showcased each element really well. It showcased what could be done. So similarly, a lot of these other art forms in India, they have the potential, all of them, to be interpreted in the modern context, and for architects and designers to just have a different new world opened up to them.
What do you think it's missing? A lot of that knowledge should be converted or even educated in this part of the world.
I think just the effort, and somebody who's willing to do it, uh, is that's what's missing. And we are trying in our little tiny capacity to do what we can do through our projects, through architects and designers who are able to trust me as an artist, who are able to, I encourage them to see the different possibilities. And I don't think anything which is created is ever lost. So I do not hold back from creating renderings or creating sketches and just showing it to people, because I believe that it will happen someday. Maybe not now, maybe 10 years down the line, but I absolutely believe that when they're ready, it will happen. There's no stopping that.
I love it. We're in the part of the show right now that I ask every guest three questions, and today is not going to be different either. So we need you to recommend us a book, something to read. It can be something that you read recently or a favorite book. It's up to you. A movie, a TV show, something to watch, and who should we invite to be our next guest here on Minded?
Okay, so the book. I'm reading this book which I'm loving, and I'm reading it. Whenever I love a book, I start reading it super slowly because I don't want it to finish. So I'm reading this book by Arundhati Subramaniam, which is Women Who Only Wear Themselves. And I love it. It was a gift by a friend. It's a beautiful book. This is a woman who is a seeker. She seeks to be more, and she questions herself every day. And I feel I'm that way as well. I'm really truly enjoying that book. So I would recommend that to everybody. Women Who Only Wear Themselves. It really, authenticity is so hard to find these days, in this world of Pinterest where everybody is copying and pasting. Being
Yeah.
authentic and being true to yourself, I really value that, and I try to be that way. Um, the show, my favorite show is, I mean, I could name a bunch of design shows, but I think something which has really taught me, because I do deal with a lot of people, whether it is communicating my ideas or whether it is managing the team. Uh, One of my favorite shows is Ted Lasso. Uh, because leadership doesn't need to be loud. Creativity doesn't need to make uh, it's slow. Growth is slow. Growth is gradual. People need to be nurtured, and you don't have to fight back. You have to fight forward. So Ted Lasso for me
And
is
believe.
and believe, just believe, and
we
just have
just
faith.
finished yeah, we just finished rewatching like for the second or third time now. We love it. It's a great show. It's a lot of fun.
It's it's a great show, and you just learn so much. I mean, everybody in this world where everybody is so cutthroat, this is a show which is asking you to be nice,
Hmm.
uh, and to nurture, and I love that. I
What a
absolutely.
novelty, right? What a
Mhm.
novelty.
Isn't that sad that that there is one show which is asking us to be nice? So that's a great show. Who would I invite as a pot for your next show? Oh, that's a question. So I there is a light and sound artist. I recently came across his work. He's based in LA. I don't know him personally at all, but I love his work. I love his work. I can't remember his name, so I have another name for you. I recently was in Mexico for this. He's a musician, and he is a sound artist. So he creates these sound baths, and I recently did a course with him, 100-hour sound healing, because I want to incorporate sound in my work. So he's a magician when it comes to these pentatonic instruments. It's incredible what he does. He calls himself the medicine of sound. His name is Rene. He's a close friend. Uh, he's he's a genius. I rarely come across people who are as brilliant as he is. He said I became a sound healer because I didn't want people to see me playing music because he's so shy, but he's incredible at what he does, and I would really recommend that you invite him for the show. Yeah.
Excellent. I love the suggestion for sure. Listen, I for selfish reason, when I do conversation like this, I my favorite ones are the one that I walk away that I learn something new, that I can walk away with a few things that I'll be able to share with other people. And I feel today has been one of those. So I want
Thank
to
you.
thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time and share a little bit more about your journey, your story, and your mission. And I cannot wait to see what you're going to be doing from now on. And we keep fighting the fight forward. And that's it. I really thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Tell everybody who's listening, or most of the people who's going to be watching us, how they can follow you, get to know a little bit more about your projects and everything else.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Yuri. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Uh, yeah, it's been great.